Welcome to this Killick Explains video, and welcome to part 3 of my financial mistakes series. For those people who missed them, part 1 was about growing up, part 2 was about middle age, the sandwich generation, and this is about getting older. Now before you turn off thinking I'm not getting older, remember you may be responsible or become responsible for people who are. That's how life works. So, starting with the pluses. Getting older brings experience, wisdom, and hopefully a degree more financial security than perhaps we enjoyed certainly when we were young and even in middle age, frantically trying to pay school fees in some cases, clear mortgages, and so on. But there are downsides. And the downsides, I would say, include the fact that at a certain point your income may drop, hopefully not because you actually lose a job, if you like, but simply you want to dial it down or stop at some point. Life can still be relatively expensive. Some people think, finally, I can do some of the things I always wanted to do. And some people suffer from head in the sand syndrome. They don't plan. So I'm going to bring 3 mistakes out that I want to just cover here, 3 traps, if you like. One is spending too much. Perversely, the other is spending too little. And the third is giving up on planning. Done that, paid the school fees, cleared the mortgage. If you're fortunate enough to have done that, who needs to plan? Let's live a little. Well, I think these are all mistakes. So spending too much. All right. Now, that is simply a function of not budgeting and not having a drawdown plan. Let's say you've built a reasonable pot. You want to draw down from it. All right. It's just a case of having a strategy, deciding on the rate. Okay. Looking at the factors that will influence the size of the pot, whether it's growing, still accumulating in some cases, or more likely decumulating. All right, so in other words, it's just thinking about that phase of life and not just leaving it to chance. It's also about claiming the various allowances that start to accrue as you get older. Okay, and there are more of them, and they're worth knowing about and worth claiming. And then it's a big debate, a family debate, is do you actually want to stop work and retire in a conventional sense? Work has many positives, not for everyone. There are some people who can't wait to stop, I get that, and have strong interests they want to pursue instead of work. But if you don't, is it a good idea to suddenly take up an aggressive team sport where you might pull your back in your 50s when you never did it in your 20s, right? So think about what you're actually going to do with your time if you stop work. And for some people, dialing down, dialing back, or even changing their career. I know people who've done a complete career switch out of the corporate world into teaching, for example, simply because they want the stimulation that a completely new job and set of challenges brings. Now for spending too little. Now, believe it or not, there are people out there who've saved and saved and worked and worked and worked, and they actually don't know what to do with themselves once they get to the point where they have done enough. They've accumulated peak savings, as we call it, and now it's time to actually enjoy themselves, spend a bit of money. And think about it, quite a few costs may drop away. Commuting costs, for example, all the sort of baggage that comes with you running a life in the office, some of that stuff will drop away. Maybe kids have left home, maybe the mortgage is a lot smaller than it used to be or even disappeared. So there is a bit more flexibility there potentially. And the problem with people who are too cautious is you never know. I'm afraid, no one gets out of here alive, as the old cliche goes. And basically what people can do is fall into the trap of thinking they've got the same amount of time ahead when they're in their 50s and 60s as they had in their 20s, because they don't feel too dissimilar. Well, you just never know. So believe it or not, sometimes it's a case of spending up a bit, all right, rather than spending too much. It'll depend on who you are. It'll depend on all kinds of things as to which camp you fall into. And then there's failing to plan. And this wraps up both points. You need a strategy for the later phase of life. A lot of people put a lot of time and effort into saving when they're young, dealing with the pressures of middle age. It's important to keep that going. You need a decumulation strategy. The days are gone, really, where employers just gave you 2/3 of your final salary index linked and off you went, knowing what your income would be. You need a strategy. You need to think about gifts and inheritances, particularly at the moment. When am I going to make them? Can I afford to make them? Will they be tax efficient? And you need to put a little bit of thought into that uncomfortable phase of later life where potentially the house may no longer suit you. You may need more help at home. And that phase can get quite expensive, although it's not something to over-index on. But it goes back to my point, don't allow the roof to fall in, plan, if you like, to shore it up ahead of time. So on that slightly depressing note, arguably, but it's important stuff, I'll just refer you to some other resources if you'd like to find out more. One is other Killick Explains videos, and that's killick.com/resources. That's where you'll also find digital versions of my how-to guides, and there is one on the later life phase. Specifically, it's got an orange cover. And then there's our quarterly magazine, Confidant.